we all know that there's this illusion that everything's great in the economy and the world, but, if you really want to admit it to yourself, it's a scary reality that we're living in.
Howdy, folks. Welcome to the Daily Coin. My name is Rory, and as a lot of you know, I've been a daily contributor at SGT Report for the past 2.5 years, and in that time, I've been able to meet a lot of really great people. I've been fortunate enough to interview a lot of people. I've got on the line today an author, a preparedness expert. She publishes the website Rady Nutrition. And her latest book, The Prepper's Blueprint, which is a comprehensive guide that uses real-life scenarios to help you prepare for any disaster. And of course, I'm talking about Miss Tess Pennington. Welcome to the show, Miss Pennington.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
Well, I'm glad you're here. And I want to just jump right in and hit it pretty hard. And Ebola is on the move. And according to 3 days ago, there was the World Health Organization sent out their global alert and response regarding Ebola, and it had the latest numbers. And this is as of July the 27th. There has been a total confirmed 729 deaths. There are 1,323 total cases, and this is primarily affecting Guinea, Liberia, Nigeria, and Sierra Leone. And those 4 countries are just getting decimated by this just horrendous disease. And Tess, you and I, neither one of us are doctors, and we're not going to be giving out any medical advice. And we ask that the audience to please seek medical advice from a trusted medical professional. And we are just delivering information only. And what I would like to start out with, Tess, is would an N95 mask or something of that nature, say that Ebola does wind up here in the States, would an N95 mask be helpful in fending off the Ebola virus?
I honestly think anything would be helpful, just to be prepared in any way. I read a great article just the other day from doomandbloom.net, where he was talking about what preparedness items you could do to prepare for this. And he had a face mask with a protective face shield.
Okay.
He had it was a disposable like body cloth, like a robe to put on, gloves, and oh man, it was something else. And, I looked all of these items up. They're all on Amazon. They're all on probably a lot of the medical preparedness websites. But, any kind of prevention is better than none at all. Given our vast array of transportation systems, these modern type of infections and viruses are going to spread very rapidly. And, I know that the CDC and the, WHO, probably are doing their best at keeping things from spreading. I don't trust anybody.
I don't trust them.
That is something that I don't trust that's a virus, and, there's a lot of information on this virus that you can read about, but, there's one sneeze and millions of little, vapors in the air will, anybody can get it. If you're on an airplane, a bus system, a train system, or any kind of public area, that's some scary stuff you're looking at. And, if you do a lot of research, I have on pandemic preparedness because it's just something that it's going to happen, in one form or another. There's the Black Plague, there's the Spanish flu, which is something that I mentioned in my book, the Prepper's Blueprint, about the Spanish flu. I mean, it can spread so rapidly, just like a wildfire. And, there's a lot of challenges with our commerce. There's going to be a lot of shutdowns, breakdowns in basic infrastructure like communications and the transportation systems that I was just talking about, and even our supply chains. So if you don't have your ducks in a row, so to speak, for preparedness, you don't have your food, your water, you're going to have to venture out, into this, dangerous virus, filled place where you're taking a chance at harming, yourself and your family, basically. So, it's something that you really want to think about.
We should all be thinking about it, especially with, like I said, the alert, this global alert and response from from the WHO. Like I said, it's 5 days old right now, and this covers a 3-day span from July 24th through July 27th. And during that time in Guinea, there were 33 new cases. In Liberia, there were 80. In Sierra Leone, there were 8. And in Nigeria, there was 1. So this can spread very, very rapidly. And that's one of the things. And do we need to be covered up completely just to go to the grocery store? I mean, not assuming, but if it does get to the States and if it does start spreading, I mean, I would need to be covered from head to toe, it sounds like.
Well, again, I'm not a medical expert, but I know that if it reaches the U.S., then that means a huge amount of our population are in highly densely populated areas. Yes. So you're going to get these huge pockets of the virus spreading. And then it takes up to, I believe, 2 weeks for sometimes for the symptoms to show for Ebola. Mm-hmm. So if that's the case, within the last 2 weeks, I've traveled to Texas. I've gone to, a city. I've gone to restaurants. I mean, think about that. You've gone to schools. That infection can spread so rapidly, so I don't know what would happen, but I honestly believe just from the research that I've done on pandemics, the government will activate pandemic mitigation measures. And with that, there'll be isolation and treatment, which is what they're doing now in certain parts of the globe. Voluntary home quarantines. The next level is they'll dismiss students from school, and and any kind of school-based activities. And then they'll start doing social distancing measures, which I personally think you should do in the beginning. Yes. If there's any kind of a concern about this, don't take your kids to school. Right. Keep them at home. Don't go to hospitals to visit people if at all possible. I mean, I know that my heart goes out to the families that are dealing with the Ebola crisis, because if my husband was struck down by this, I would want to be by his side. I would want to let him know that I care about him, that I'm praying about him, and that I'm supporting him. But at the same time, I know that he wouldn't want me there.
Right.
He would want me to protect myself from this. So it's a very emotional, thing to think about. But, you do need to think about distancing yourself from public areas.
Let's look at it from a different angle. On July the 8th, you reported how the CDC had mishandled the 6 vials of smallpox. This is a quote from the article. Along with 10 other vials with unclear labeling information in a cold storage room that is owned by the Food and Drug Administration.
Well, I can honestly say that, we're all humans, and accidents happen, and people are very forgetful about certain protocols. And I mean, we're talking about smallpox here,
right. One of the
pathogen, and they just have it left out, just for the heck of it. And, these things happen. And even though the CDC is trying to cover it up and let everyone know that, everything was taken care of, this is 10 vials of a very deadly virus,
The 10 vials, the 10, it says, they found 6 freeze-dried vials labeled as containing variola, which is another name for smallpox, and 10 other vials with unclear labeling information in a cold storage room that is owned by the Food and Drug Administration on the National Institutes of Health campus in Bethesda, Maryland. Now, with that said, the mishandling of the deadliest disease, I kind of feel like they're sending us a signal that there's the potential for this to actually be a false flag operation with bringing these doctors into Atlanta. And we're recording this on Friday, August the 1st. So I'm not saying that they're using them as a bioweapon, but I wouldn't put it past our government because they're so out of control at this point. I mean, what do you think?
Well, I know a lot of people are concerned about that. Just from reading comments and such on this subject, there are a lot of people that are so concerned about the fact that they could take this, manipulate it, and use it against us or another country. Let's just say that, and it's very concerning. It's something that I think every American does not want on the soil of this country. It's extremely concerning.
It is very concerning, simply because, from my perspective, they didn't need to bring them here. They could have done what needed to be done where they were at, and why they felt the need to bring them here, I'm not exactly sure. But
right.
I mean,
they said it was because they wanted to give them the state-of-the-art facility so that they could get the care that they deserve. But there are exceptional hospitals all over the world that they could have been taken to.
Yes.
I'm wondering if maybe, them coming here was just so that the families were able to go, but why they couldn't fly the families out is beyond me. But, it's what concerns me the most about all of this is going back to the smallpox. The storage room that these 10 vials of smallpox were in a building that had no security. And the security is what I'm worried about, even with the Ebola. I'm sure that they're going to have lockdown procedures, but they're taking this patient to a hospital.
Right.
Some kind of a medical facility where there are other people. What if it gets into the air?
Exactly. Into the air, into the HVAC.
Exactly. I mean, we've all seen Outbreak. I'm sure we've seen a lot of the same movies. So, it makes the hairs on my arms stand up. It's very concerning. But, again, the only thing that we can do, we can't control this. It's already happening. So all we can do is prepare for it and take the steps necessary to keep ourselves away from this virus.
I posted a fact sheet from the MSDS, which is Material Safety's data sheet, online, and as of 2010, it stated that Ebola can spread from human to human with a, quote, 1 to 10 aerosolized organisms contact. In other words, between 1 particle and 10 particles can spread this disease. And the question that I have, Tess, is that I know we all know that body fluids, but would body fluids include sweat? I mean, once again, we're not doctors, but I don't know, and I'm not sure if you know, but I wanted to ask. I mean, if I'm out in the yard and I've got a good sweat going, and I've been infected with it and I didn't know it, and I shake my neighbor's hand, did I just pass it off to them?
Well, I see your concern, and I know that it is spread through body fluids. I don't, and I know that the person who gets it has to have some kind of an open cut or something for the virus to penetrate through. So honestly, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know, but I think that you should definitely be concerned. And I have heard, I'm actually looking at a article, and I have heard from this that sweat can contain it. Sweat, vomit, diarrhea,
right,
blood, urine, and even semen. So,
yes.
I mean, it's a pretty nasty virus.
Yes, and it is a virus.
It can affect your body. It can attack it from multiple angles.
And let's change gears a little bit. I personally, I would consider a city like Kansas City, Kansas, or Council Bluff, Iowa, Phoenix, Arizona. I consider these to be medium-sized cities, and the obvious large cities like Atlanta, New York, San Francisco, Miami. This is where most of the people live in the United States, are in these densely, like you alluded to a minute ago, these densely populated cities. And what form of transportation would you recommend for people to have in order to evacuate from a medium or a large city? I mean, should they, if possible, have a couple of different options, or what are your thoughts?
Oh, that's a loaded question. So, with bugging out in particular, one of the things there's so many different reasons why people should bug in and bug out. Let's just take the pandemic example. Your city has been struck down by a pandemic, and you have got to leave the city. You can no longer bug in. You had your supplies, but you can't. The roadways are going to be completely congested. You will not. I honestly believe the best way that you could probably get out of the city is by very primitive types of transportation. Bicycles, motorcycles, that's not really primitive, but, and by foot. That's the fastest way you're going to get out. The roadways are also going to be very dangerous places that people will take what you have. They'll attack you, and you don't want to be anywhere near the roadways. Some of the ways that I have researched to bug out as safely as possible, you find a railway. The railways will take you out. They will take you out of the city. They will take you out of the state. That's what they were designed to do. You follow the railways, even if you know of rivers that can take you, that flow out of the state. I mean, that's a good thing to be near, because you're going to have water. But you also have to keep in mind that there will be a lot of people that will be taking that same advice,
yes,
and could run into bands of crime or mobs. So, this is why right now you need to strategically plan your escape route so that okay, I can't go out by the highway systems. So my plan B is, to take the motorcycles or the quads or what, bicycles or whatever, and go out this way. So I can honestly tell you, my family evacuated during Hurricane Rita in Houston, and at the time, my husband and I were up in Dallas. So that is typically a 4-hour drive, and it took them 12.
Wow.
So, and this is bumper to bumper. You're not moving you're barely moving just for 12 hours. So if you get off the highway to go to the bathroom, it's going to take another hour or so to get back on. I think in emergency situations, people get very panicky, and it's every man for themselves. And even though, we have seen in emergencies, there's this amazing humanitarianism between our brothers and sisters of our country, there's also a panic.
Yeah.
You're trying to get your family out there, and
Right.
you want to do well for other people, but sometimes you can't do that. And, you have to take that into account.
I'm glad that you brought up Rita, because that is the reason that I wanted to ask you about that. At the end of each of the chapter in the Prepper's Blueprint, you give a list of action items, and you also give a what to do list, and that's part of where that question came from. But in the situation in Rita, we saw the images. I'm in Tennessee, and I'm watching the news and seeing how both sides of the freeway are north only, and it looks like a parking lot.
Well, in Rita, they didn't open up the contraflows, the flows going both ways. It was only one way. They, and that's the thing that I have found with Katrina and Rita. And, I lived in the South in Texas. So, I really studied the protocols, the emergency protocols that were taken, and the mistakes. And that is the problem. And something that you and I discussed earlier is when emergencies happen, people panic, they get antsy, and they make mistakes because they think rashly, and they don't follow through with their thoughts. And this also goes for government and city people that are trying to create these emergency protocols. They're going to flub up too. It's going to happen. And, the not opening up the contraflows was a huge mistake, and something I think that they've changed since then. But, it caused so much congestion, and people's cars broke down. They overheated because they were just sitting on the highways, and I think that with these mistakes that they made, it only concretes and cements to me that the government isn't as ready as they say they are. and it's our responsibility to take care of our family, not them.
We have to be good stewards of our lives, and anyone that's counting on the government or anyone outside of your family to take care of your family, don't take this the wrong way, but you're making a huge mistake. You're putting your life and your family's life into the hands of someone else.
It's a big gamble.
I'm not going to do that. I'm not willing to do that.
And that's one reason why I have made preparedness such a big part of my life. And, it makes me very proud to see when my children they prepare themselves for things, just in case I brought this water. I mean, it's small things, but they're taking notice of my life.
It just shows that they're thinking about it.
Yeah.
That it is becoming part of who they are and what they are, and that's a great thing. I wanted to get back to the transportation, and you had mentioned a motorcycle, and if you're going to have a gasoline or some type of fuel powered vehicle, I mean, how would someone store and, more importantly, transport additional fuel or gasoline, whatever the fuel is?
There's a lot of information about fuel storage. Some people say not to do it because you have to have certain things that keep the fuel active and that sort of thing. So if you're going to store it, I would definitely store at least maybe 10 or 15 gallons, if you can, just to get you so that you can strap it on somehow with bungee cords, and that you're able, so that when you do run out, you'll be able to use that fuel. And, definitely stock up on fuel stabilizers, and maybe even, and a lot of people are doing this, they're converting their engines into biodiesel.
Yeah.
So that they can at least have that on hand and use the fuels that they have. I think preparedness issues, the biodiesel, find out how many miles it is to get there, and make sure that you have extra fuel to get to that point.
That makes sense. That's very logical. I'm going, yeah, here's point A and there's point B, and how many miles and how many gallons do I need?
Yeah. But, you know,
calculated from
look
there.
into how to store it properly. You want to make sure that you rotate it also. It's very important, or, you know, that fuel's going to sit and it's going to change its chemical composition.
Okay. One of the things that you had mentioned, the hurricanes and Sandy superstorm that blew through the Northeast a couple of years ago, that's exactly what happened. And Mark S. Mann, who is a contributor over at SGT Report, he lives in Connecticut and saw it firsthand. And there were several reports that came out from that area, and excuse me, and what was happening was people were standing in line to get fuel with a fuel tank in hand, and the shopkeepers, there's no electricity, so it's cash only. So if you're operating on digital dollars, you don't get any, and because they had no means of transacting business other than cash, and the prices were, they reflected the need, period. And some people call it price gouging, or, you know, taking advantage of a situation. It is what it is.
Well, it's the same thing. The tow trucks would do the same thing.
Exactly.
When they're towing your car off the highway, it wasn't $100. It was $500. Right. I mean, it will happen. It's the human condition, you know, and people, you know, quote unquote, have to make money, have to make a living. But, you know.
Well, it's also, some people would argue that it's the free market.
Right. And I'm not going to dispute that. But what concerns me is emotions are already running so high.
Yes.
And when people are standing in the lines at the gas station, they find out how much it is. You know, there's a lot of anger and a lot of frustration, and that's when a lot of the fights break out. I mean, fights breaking out over gas is kind of a common thing. You know, you're off the grid. You know, no one knows how to live off the grid, because we're all so dependent on it, always to have this everlasting need of power. And that's one of the first things to go when a disaster happens. And that's something that we need to prepare for and have tools and skills set up and knowledge so that we can live off of it comfortably.
Yes. And once again, it's called being a good steward. If you're not a good steward of your life, and look at different situations and understand that the environment that we live in is very fragile. I mean, it can break very, very easily. I mean, look at what's happening right now. We have a microorganism that's wreaking havoc on our world. You can't even see it, and it's creating all these issues. Communications. On July the 31st, you posted, and we carried at the Daily Coin, a great article on communications during a disaster situation. And I want to be clear about the definition of a disaster. If my wife or myself, heaven forbid, were to be injured in our everyday lives, that would be a disaster. Yes. But for communications, let's say it's a regional or national situation that that affects a large area. He wrote, communicating during an emergency may be essential not only for survival, but to help locate loved ones and garner news about an unfolding scenario. Buying an emergency radio and communications devices is just the first step in being prepared for a disaster. Building a Faraday cage to keep the device or devices may help ensure the tool remains functional remains in functional order should a solar flare or EMP attack occur. And that's quite a bit, but I wanted to start with the Faraday cage. Am I pronouncing it correctly, first of all?
Oh, yes. Yes, you are.
What is a Faraday cage? Why is it important? And then if you would, Tess, go into the different types of communication devices that we should possibly look into.
Like I mentioned it was mentioned in the article, when an EMP strikes or there's a solar flare, all of your electronic devices are vulnerable to destruction. So what you want to do is basically try and protect those as best you can with a Faraday cage. And just a little bit of history, there's a scientist in England that his last name was Faraday, actually, and he came up with the idea of creating a container that would protect itself from electrostatic charges. Basically, there's a lot of ways that you can make them. There is some controversy on whether or not these are 100% reliable, but a lot of people have talked about aluminum garbage cans with a lid, metal filing cabinets, heavy metal toolboxes, and even like a gutted microwave. You can use these to put your communications devices in. But, I usually concentrate on like hard drives or USB drives, batteries, flashlights, even your laptops with the charger. You could do that as well. So, and as far as other communication devices, you could do your cell phones and your walkie-talkies. When emergencies happen, and especially if there's an EMP, that is going to take us back to the 1800s.
In a flash.
America will be a third world country. We won't have any of we won't have the grid, the communication systems, the transportation systems, any way to get money. I mean, you're going to have to rely on your skills and bartering and the food that you have in place to see you through. And, a lot of people who've done research on this, the grid is very dependent on this old, way of conducting electricity. And if it went down from an EMP, they wouldn't be able to get the proper equipment to bring the grid back up because the equipment is made in China.
Right.
So there's no way to communicate, hey, we need this sent over. And even if it was, it would take months to get here and then months to set back up. So, you really want to think about that as well.
And I believe that this article was written by Tara Dodrill, Dodrill, and she goes on to talk about CB radios. I mean, should we have, CB radios and a 2-meter and a 10-meter radio, and should we have those devices in an aluminum trash can right now? I mean, should I have one or two of these devices, and should I have, because if there's an EMP blast, heaven forbid, there's not going to be any warning for that, or there's going to be very limited amount of warning. And
right.
A solar blast or a solar flare, we're at least going to have a little bit of a warning, a day or so. I mean, should we be storing these items now and just have those communications in a Faraday cage, set aside with our other preps? I mean, is that the plan?
Something that I want to touch on really quick is when if you are going to use these, do-it-yourself Faraday cages, you're going to want to insulate the items with a non-conductive material. Okay. So you could use, for instance, cardboard.
Okay.
Something similar to that. But, my advice to everyone is, that old prepper adage, you want to have backups for your backups. So, with your CB radios, yes, you want to have these items stored away safely, but you also want to be able to use them, and you want to be able to master that skill. With CB radios, you can talk to people, both people on 40 different channels, and you could do just using radio frequency. So, this is something that you want to practice and refine that skill. And, so I would definitely, a lot of people can't do this, but I would get supplies for communication and have those that you can use now, and then save up, invest in secondary products that you can store.
As far as an EMP or a solar flare, I presume that it would destroy a solar generator, the generator itself, I know it would fry that. But as far as if you've got the collapsible solar panels, I mean, should we have because if there's not any electricity and I've got these devices that require electricity, they're not going to operate if I don't have the proper fuel for them.
Right.
So I'm going to have to invest in some type of storable solar electricity as well. Or am I completely wrong in that?
Well, an EMP could very easily cripple our way of life.
Yes.
And, and even if it isn't that, a geomagnetic storm could do the same.
Okay.
Ruin our electrical grid that we have now. And I think that it would cause issues with the solar panels. So you are going to need to look into off-grid ways to, process your food and heat your homes and, continue your way of life. I don't know if an EMP, a lot of people are preparing for them, and I think that it's good to do that, but I believe that if you prepare smart, then you're already preparing for an off-grid environment, and the supplies and the tools that you have will help see you through. If you're in a grid-down environment like that, and it would create a long-term emergency, there would be a lot of problems with roaming, people that aren't as prepared as you.
Yeah, the marauders are definitely going to be an issue.
Right, and in that case, you don't want to have electricity anyway.
Is there anything, Tess, that you want to leave our audience with before we let you go?
I want to invite you to visit my website. I've got a lot of preparedness articles. My website is RadyNutrition.com. There's a lot of preparedness series, survival food information, how to store your food, and really what I've been trying to get at with my website is just how to live simply and create a different mental thought on preparedness. And I invite you to read the articles, check out my book, The Prepper's Blueprint. It just got published a few months ago. It seems to be doing really well. It's got some really good reviews. And thank you for having me, Roy.
Well, I certainly appreciate it. And let's not forget that you authored also Prepper's Cookbook. It sounds like you have a lot to offer, Tess, over at RadyNutrition.com as far as people being able to learn how to be good stewards of their lives and be prepared for situations that we don't really want to think about, but we have to.
Yeah. Well, and I think that, the more you think about these situations and you find solutions to the problems, the better off you'll be.
Finding solutions. That's what we're all about. We need more solutions. We have plenty of questions.
Yes.
Well, with that, I won't take up any more of your time, and I want to thank everybody for tuning in and giving us a listen. And don't forget to subscribe and share and comment below. And Tess, I will talk with you soon.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.